Hey everyone, I hope that you're doing well. I hope that you've been reading a lot of books with everything that's going on. It's such a great way to escape. And so I thought I would take this time to do a quick what I read in April vlog. I have two that really stand out. They're like gonna be new favorites, I think, and one that I was kind of disappointed with because I thought I would really love it and I didn't love it. So let's just go ahead and get into it. Let's go ahead and get started with this one. It's Emily of New Moon by LM Montgomery. She wrote Anne of Green Gables, and I love Anne of Green Gables. I love the entire series because I can really relate to her imagination and her whimsy. So I wasn't sure if I would love Emily of New Moon as much as I loved Anne of Green Gables, and I didn't quite love it as much, but I loved it a lot in a completely different way. I mean, it's definitely going to be a new favorite book for me, mostly because she's just so quirky and eccentric, and I think she seems a lot more like LM Montgomery, the author. And I love the fact that Emily wants to be a writer, and while Anne has some dreams and ambitions, it's not quite the same, and Emily's a little bit of an outsider and she's very stubborn. Anne is very stubborn, but she is like strong stubborn, and I like that about her. So there's a section toward the first part of this book that I really liked. She is thinking that she's going to have to live with her great aunt Ruth, who is not very nice from what she's heard, and she's talking to the housekeeper who lived with her and her dad. And she says, "I don't think I want Aunt Ruth to take me," said Emily deliberately after a moment's reflection. "Well, you won't have the choosing, likely. You ought to be thankful to get a home anywhere. Remember, you're not of much importance." "I am important to myself," cried Emily proudly. And I just love that line. I think that's so awesome, to be important to yourself. And I know that that could be taken as like too much pride or snobbish, but I think for a kid of 11 or 12 who's just lost her father and is kind of being pushed around and not really sure where she's going to live, who's going to take her in, a lot of these relatives are really strict, and I just think that that kind of note just plays out throughout the book, that she really finds a lot of self-confidence from within, from who she is from within. She doesn't care that she's weird, and sort of like, I think sometimes is a little bit more self-aware, or maybe a little bit more self-conscious, like she hates her red hair. And Emily has things that bug her, but she will like forcefully stand up to people, and it was really fun to see that in her character. But yet she's not mean at all. She's just really quirky and eccentric. I won't give it away, but the end of the book is really solidly about her finding her voice as a writer and knowing that being a writer is going to be important to her. And I've heard that kind of happens throughout the series, that writing and her determination to write is really important to the story. And I have the next two books right here, which is Emily Climbs and Emily's Quest. I'm excited to read the rest of this series, but I've heard that the last book is really about her overcoming this battle of not believing in herself a little bit as she gets older, and feeling like that she won't be able to make it as a writer. And as a writer myself, I just find it really inspiring to read about someone's determination. And I really enjoyed reading a lot about female authors from this era because they had so many more obstacles to overcome. That really dovetails well in with the biography that I finished up at the end of April, which is House of Dreams by Liz Rosenberg. I got that one at the library, and that is just a fantastic biography of LM Montgomery. If you've ever been curious about her, or if you are a writer, if you are someone who is creative and wants a little inspiration, I definitely feel like it's very inspirational. The end of her life, I will say, is very tragic and very sad, so prepare yourself for that. But I think the way that the biographer writes it, she definitely brings it full circle. One of the things that she said in her letters, I think it was, is that no matter how much darkness there was in her own life, she wanted to show optimism and happiness in her books and inspire other people and give them as much happiness as possible. And her life was very bittersweet. She had family members who didn't always understand her. Even though she did have a really fun childhood on Prince Edward Island, you see the bittersweet of her life, and towards the end it was definitely a little bit more bitter than sweet. But she's still just an amazing woman and very inspiring. The fact that she did so much and created such a rich, diverse world of novels set on Prince Edward Island in Canada, and the fact that she made so much money that she was able to buy a house for herself and her husband and really take care of her family and really be kind of a rich woman for, you know, that era. I mean, that's pretty astounding. And she lived to see a movie adaptation or two of Anne of Green Gables, so I just thought she was really fascinating to read about. Since I haven't done a reading wrap up before, I wanted to add a book that I read in March and I really loved, and I just think it's so fun and uplifting, and it made me laugh, and so I feel like that's what we need in the world right now. It was a 5-star read for me, so I had to mention it. Got it at the library. I'll put it right here. It is called Summer at Tiffany by Marjorie Hart. It is a true autobiography, but basically it's about a couple of Iowa girls, college girls during World War II, who decided to have a crazy fun summer in New York. And like I said, this is all absolutely true. This is what happened in her real life, so it's not a fiction book, it's an autobiography or a memoir. It's a memoir, and it's so much fun seeing like 1940s New York. She and her best friend end up becoming the first women to work for Tiffany, the jewelry store, and the experiences they had were incredible. Like I said, I laughed out loud a couple of times because Marjorie is just like a woman after my own heart. I felt like it was just like so relatable, because like we all have that friend who does something and it comes off like flawlessly, and then you try to do the exact same thing and it just completely melts down and does not turn out well at all. And so to give an example of that, Marjorie talks about how her friend would have to take some jewelry upstairs to the repair shop, and she would always in the elevator like open the jewelry container so she could see like the beautiful diamonds or the beautiful jewelry and kind of like see what it was like, because they weren't really supposed to touch it. And so they thought like, well, in the elevator I can get away with it and I can look at it. So her friend did that, and she's like, yeah, you've got to do it. The next time you have to bring up some jewelry, she's like, you've got to open the box, like nobody will ever know, and you just have to see these amazing beautiful pieces and jewels. And of course Marjorie is in the elevator and she's like, yeah, I'm gonna check out this jewelry, and she opens the box and it's pearls. It's a pearl necklace that has come unstrung, and the pearls literally scatter everywhere like marbles, like all over the elevator. And so she keeps pushing the elevator up and down, and she's like grabbing all these pearls and like trying to get them back in the box. I was laughing so hard. One of the coolest things that she shares is that while she was working at Tiffany's, she saw Judy Garland at the store. She saw Marlene Dietrich. So any old Hollywood fans will really appreciate those cameos in the book. And then it was really fun too, just seeing her like go out on the town with her friends. She was hanging out with midshipmen, and oh, and also seeing Victory over Japan Day, just the celebration of the war ending and being in Times Square and just the craziness. It kind of made me tear up because she shared a little bit about you know, family members or people that she knew in the war who were killed, and just the stress and the sadness. It kind of reminded me of what it'll probably be like when this pandemic is over and we can all go embrace each other again, and just like the celebrating out on the streets when just something that's like hung over the country or the world, I guess, for so long, and it's finally over. So I recommend that for right now if you're looking for something really happy. It was another 5-star read. Loved it, loved it, loved it. The next book I read was for the Owls Readathon, which I talked about in my TBR video for the Owls. And so this one was for History of Magic. I did read this one by Rainbow Rowell, Wayward Son. I loved this book so much. I gushed a lot about it in the TBR because I'd already started reading a little bit about it, so I won't go over it too much, but I will say that there is a fantastic scene with a wizard who has wings, which is Simon, a vampire, Baz, and Penelope, who is also like a witch slash wizard at this magic school. They take a road trip, and there is a fantastic scene in a cheesecake factory, and I don't know why, but just like something about the juxtaposition of the Cheesecake Factory and this like absurd magical world, and they're like having an argument about like life and like magical stuff, and just while also looking through this like giant Cheesecake Factory menu and like enjoying like delicious huge pieces of cheesecake. It made me laugh. And also, I said in my TBR that this is like a very quirky kind of tongue-in-cheek book. It's definitely not for everybody. It's kind of absurd at times, but then Rainbow Rowell's writing is so good that you believe in this kind of crazy, almost sort of jokey world, satirical kind of world. I guess that's the right word for it. I would say the best thing to compare it to, I thought of this the other day, is to compare it to the TV show Legacy. And the world is really kind of absurd with like all these different monsters and all this different magic. That is this book. If you like Legacies, you will like this book. It is just fun and funny, and I laughed so much. So there's a new character who strangely, like in my head, I just kept picturing him as MG in Legacies. If you watch Legacies, you know who I'm talking about. And here's the first book. I liked it so much. I'd read this from the library. I had to buy the first book. So the first book you need to start with is Carry On. It was a little bit like Harry Potter, like almost like a parody of Harry Potter sometimes. I mean, I really did enjoy it. I really, really did. But I kept comparing it to Harry Potter. This I didn't compare it to Harry Potter. This was 100% its own thing. And I cannot wait for the third book. I'm going to read them again before the third book comes out, which I think maybe next fall or early next year. If you need something just fun, escapist, and like every kind of magical creature, every kind of magical thing you can think of, go for this book. It kept me on the edge of my seat. Like, I could not guess what was going to happen, and a lot of times I can guess with stories, but this one I just couldn't predict what was going to happen. So I liked that, and it kept my attention and kept me from thinking about like problems in the real world, because I was thinking about, you know, a wizard with wings who's like trying to deal with his love life and go on a road trip and like save one of their best friends in California. Next, another pick in the Owls Readathon. I was so excited about this book. I was excited about it when I bought it in my Come Book Shopping With Me Barnes & Noble vlog. I was excited about it when I was reading it for the Owls Readathon for Muggle Studies, and honestly, like, oh my gosh, it was so slow. I really liked the first chapter because, as I mentioned in that other vlog, it's about a girl and a guy who kind of don't like each other at first, and it's an enemies to lovers kind of trope. And I'm fine with that, but it was about 120 pages before there was any growth. There would literally be arguments between them, and then I would get to like another section of the book, like a new chapter, and there would be more arguments between them, and then they would see each other again, and there would be more arguments, and I was like, I don't know if I can finish reading this book. And I feel really bad saying that because I love Casey West. I don't think this is a reflection on her as a writer. I think she's a great writer. I just think this book, this pacing just was off for me personally. Maybe some people really love it. It actually has really good reviews, so maybe some people aren't bothered by that, but for me it was just so slow. Pacing is so important, and you have to have things move forward with action to keep a reader's attention, instead of just kind of playing the same scene in like a different setting over and over again. And I've totally been guilty of this in my own writing. I'm still learning, so I never want to criticize another writer. I feel really bad like giving a book a bad reviews, and I didn't hate it. I gave it 3 stars, but it just wasn't the Casey West that I was hoping for. I love her books, and they usually like keep my attention really well. They're kind of like Hallmark movies, but in the fact that they're predictable, but they keep my attention. This one did not grab my attention until like 130 pages in, and it's a 350 page book, so that was too long for me. But by the end, I really did like it. It did have a few other slow moments. The main characters did frustrate me in how stubborn they were, and maybe that was just part of it. I did think that the main character was really like harsh a lot of times, like overly harsh, but I also thought that the main guy was kind of obnoxious, and it sort of was warranted. I don't know, I just have like a lot of muddled feelings about this book, and I think it wasn't really for me. Next, for the Owls Readathon, I have a very heavy book. This is my Complete Works of Shakespeare. I've had this since I was 11 or 12. I asked for it because I became very interested in the play A Midsummer Night's Dream. I was watching a TV show where they were putting on that play, and I got so excited about it that I told my parents I wanted to read it. My mom took me to the bookstore. The guy at the bookstore thought that we were crazy for wanting to get the Complete Works of Shakespeare or wanting to read about Shakespeare. He kind of sold me on this like children's guide to Shakespeare book, which I kind of like read a little bit of it, and then I was like, no, I really just want to read Shakespeare. I can do it. And so I got this book for Christmas a little bit later, and I kind of muddled through A Midsummer Night's Dream. I definitely did not understand everything, but I later had an English professor who said that if you don't understand something, you need to just basically like lean into it. You just need to like lean into your lack of understanding and just keep reading it over and over again, and little bits and pieces will kind of stick with you, and the more that you do it and the more that you get used to it, the more you will understand it. And that is my journey with Shakespeare, starting at like 11 or 12 years old. And so Midsummer Night's Dream is my favorite. But we're not talking about Midsummer Night's Dream. I will get to the one we're talking about, and I'm not going to keep holding this because it's really heavy. The play that I'm going to talk about is The Winter's Tale. I had never read this one. I kept trying to decide for the OWLs Readathon which one I wanted to do for my elective, because I was going for the writer-journalist career, and there was like an elective where I could basically pick any other subject of my choosing. And I know I talked about a couple of options in my TBR, but I just kind of like did something completely different, and I did Defense Against the Dark Arts, which was Grindylows, and it was a book that was set at the seaside or involved the seaside. And so The Winter's Tale does take place a little bit at the seaside with a country called Bohemia, and so I really enjoyed it. I'd heard a lot of mixed things about it, and the reason I chose The Winter's Tale out of all of them is because A, I hadn't read it, and B, the Globe Theatre, in case you guys are not aware, this is really exciting, the Globe Theatre in England is showing on their YouTube channel, I will link that down below, they are showing previously recorded Shakespeare plays, and how amazing to get to see something at the Globe Theatre. And so they've been showing some that I've already read, but I saw later in May, I think, I want to say May 18th-ish, they are going to be showing The Winter's Tale. So I've never read it, and I thought, well, that would be really cool to read it ahead. Plus, the Royal Ballet just posted their ballet version of The Winter's Tale. So it just seemed like kismet, and it was set at the seaside. It kind of fit. So I thought, why not? I'll read it, and it's short because I finished my OWLs like the day after that they were due. But I got special permission from Professor Flitwick. That's what I'm saying. I got special permission because of the pandemic to be a little bit late on my OWLs. That's okay. I still finished. But anyway, I did read this one like the night before the OWLs were over, and I really liked it. It's absurd. The plot is definitely absurd. I'd read this ahead of time about it. Some people call it a comedy, some people call it a tragedy. Basically, the first half of the play is kind of very tragic. It's very much like an Othello kind of story. A very jealous husband, he misconstrues some things, and he sends his daughter, which he thinks is not his daughter, but it is his daughter, to just be like abandoned and to be left to the elements, probably to die. He thinks his wife has died, and it's all kind of like revealed in the second half that I don't want to give it away, but like things are better than they seem, and so there's kind of a lost princess thing, which is appealing to me because I love the movie Rapunzel. And there's a love story, and there's a famous line that a lot of Shakespeare scholars like make jokes about or talk about, and it's I think it's he exits pursued by a bear, and basically like one of the characters is eaten by a bear, and that sort of like chases away the tragedy. It's like a really weird, like hard line of like, that's the last tragic thing that happens, and then enter like all of the comedy and romantic comedy and like happiness, and like things come together and get worked out in absurd ways, and everyone ends up happily ever after, except for the guy that got chased off the stage by a bear. But anyway, if you like Shakespeare and you like comedy and drama, and you want to try something that is maybe a little bit lesser known, I would definitely recommend this one, and I'm excited to watch it. Even if you don't want to read it, I'm excited to watch it on the Globe Theatre, so you guys should definitely be checking those plays out. There's a lot of plays right now. This is just a little aside, but Andrew Lloyd Webber is doing, every weekend, he is doing a previously recorded play. I saw Phantom of the Opera. Thank you to my friend Sophie. Sophie, you are awesome. Sophie told me about some of these. The National Theatre in London is also doing plays. The Royal Ballet, like I said. There's a lot of really good art to watch and check out right now while we're stuck at home. So I'll try to link some of those down below in case you guys are interested. But The Winter's Tale, I gave 4 stars. It was not my favorite Shakespeare, but I really, really enjoyed it. And I have a feeling once I see the play performed, because it just comes to life so much more when you actually see actors who are trained in Shakespeare performing it, I have a feeling I will really like it. And the last thing I will tell you about, since I'm not going to do a TBR, is the book that I'm reading right now. For all my Disney fans, I think you guys will love this. This is part of the Twisted Tales series. It is called So This Is Love by Elizabeth Lim, and Disney has quite a few of these books. It's kind of a companion series. So all of the Twisted Tales ask a question. This one asks, what if Cinderella never tried on the glass slipper? And they kind of take like a twist on a classic Disney fairy tale. And I'm really loving this one so far. I'm like 50 pages in. It starts out with Cinderella at the ball. We get to see the ball and her meeting the prince from her perspective. We get to see a little bit more of their connection, their love story, which I love that. So the twist, or where it changes, is when the Grand Duke comes to bring the glass slipper, and Cinderella can't get out. She's locked with her stepmothers. The mice can't help her because in this version of the story, the mice don't talk. And so the mice can't really help her. And so the plot kind of takes off from there, and it seems like it's going to be really fun because there's kind of like a whole history with the fairy godmothers. There's been a war like a generation ago. And so there's a lot of really interesting stuff that I can see is starting to happen here. Plus Cinderella takes off from her stepmother and begins working at the castle, and so there's like a plot to like overthrow the king and the prince, and I guess we get to see more of the love story. So it sounds like there's a lot of intrigue. We're going to get to know Cinderella more. You don't really get inside her head that much or get to know her that well in the movie, so I'm really excited for this one. And I'll try to report back on that at some point. I hope you guys are staying safe. I hope you are reading lots and lots of books. I know it's really challenging right now, but I just find that our imaginations and using that as a refuge, it can help so much. And books can just give us this escape to a completely other world in a way that TV and movies don't. And I love TV and movies, and I actually have a graduate degree in film studies with a little bit of literature, so I'm not knocking movies by any stretch of the imagination. But I read a study once that they did that when people were reading and they were checking their brainwaves actually did the exact same thing that a person's brainwaves do when they're experiencing something in real life. So when you're watching movies and TV, it's a little bit more of a passive experience. You are feeling some of the emotions of the characters, but it's a little bit more of like a distance where it's a little bit more of an empathy. But then when you're reading a book, you actually become the characters, and your brain actually processes all of the things that the characters experience as if you're processing it in real life. So that's pretty cool if you ask me. It's definitely more proof that reading is one of the best escapes that we have right now while we are all inside. So stay safe, stay healthy. I'm thinking of all of you, and I'm wishing you all the very best. And until next time, I will see you real soon. Bye.